Hey
Hey,
Fab,
Paul.
how are
How's it
you?
going? Good,
Good, I'm
good.
good.
This will be interesting topic. It's a bit different than what we've done.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yes, you want to talk about sales books? I'll let you introduce it though.
sure. Yeah. So, well, I say sales book, but it's sales content. They can be, they can be. Oops, we just lost Fab. Fab, where are you?
I'm still here. Weird.
Yeah, you disappeared for a second. Um, so the interesting thing, it is very different because today we're not going to give a specific coaching item or whatnot. I just want to talk about various books and authors I've read over the years that I find interesting. And also, I wanted to talk just about the advantages and I think the necessity to keep up to date and to read and sort of inform yourself on the
Oh,
subject of sales, particularly if you're a sales leader and also a salesperson.
right.
And so I sort of wanted to go through a few titles. There's a lot of good titles out there that I'm sure I'm going to omit, and I'm not saying that these are better, but these are sort of the ones that I find have influenced me. Some that I read quite a few years ago, and some more recently that sort of shape my way of thinking. And I think a lot of different sales books will sound or have similar messages, but they present it differently. And I think that's interesting because it sort of makes you see something important, but from a different angle. So
Right.
that's what I like about it. And I actually end up listening to most of them in audio form, and I take notes and I try to incorporate it in either trainings or coaching to help people move forward. So
Right.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't read as many business books because obviously I have my background's in marketing, and then I moved into operations. But um, I used to read a lot more. Um, I find, and this is more of a personal choice, is that other than a handful, maybe more than a handful, but other than a few chosen books, they're not all great, and I find a lot of books try to stay very high level, and it's not very, uh, it's very hard to contextualize,
Yeah.
um, and so I kind of got frustrated with it. Um, and like you said, a lot of them mention the same thing. So at some point, you kind of just get it. But that's me, right? I'm also no longer in the field. Like I'm not actually actively, other than for myself, actively selling and marketing. So that's where that comes from me. But I do have some recommendations too. So how
Oh,
about
good. Well, that's
media
great. Well, that's good. I think I'm happy you've got some recommendations.
side?
Do you want me to start, or you want to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, and I'll give you just like a brief summary of what I take away from these books, but it might be very different for you. When I say you, I mean you and the audience. Um, and one I want to start with is probably one of the first sales books I read that had a huge influence on me. And I actually resisted reading sales books for a long time because I thought they were all corny and cheesy, and they would be full of closing techniques. Um, and I think if you're buying a book for closing techniques, you're throwing yourself in the deep end. We'll talk about that after. But one of the books that I really enjoyed um, reading quite a bit, and I resisted because of its title, because I thought it was a corny title, but it actually turns out to be the grandfather of all sales books. Is How to
Hmm.
Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Hmm.
And what I like about it is it's not just a sales book; it's also a book on how you should approach winning friends and influencing people, meaning how to have proper conversations. And ultimately, in sales, that's really what you're doing. You're trying to have a proper conversation to help your client move forward. And if that's not your goal, well, then you're not a salesperson. You're a con artist. If you're not trying to help your client move forward or do something better, then you're truly missing an important opportunity. So that's one book I really really like, and I think it has wonderful lessons in there. So yeah,
Cool.
that's number.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I've heard about the book. I don't know it. I haven't I haven't read it.
I suggest you do.
I will. I will. It will be added to my book to my
And,
list of
and the,
books.
Yeah, and the thing about that one is it's not a strict sales book. It's really about conversations, and I think it can help anyone in business, honestly. And I think it helps people in life because it's really about treating people with respect. And it's actually well written. It was written, I think, in the 20s or the 30s, and it's really nice penmanship. Some sales
Mm.
books are really a slog to get through, and they're just full of
Yeah.
data, and they're not. The penmanship is let's say a little questionable, but this one, the penmanship's it's very well done. So I highly suggest it. The next one I
Cool.
want to next one I want to talk about, and I know you've heard about it because we were talking about offline earlier, is Spin Selling by Neil Rackham.
Yeah.
And that's also based on a ton of data, but that's also it's a little bit more scientific, but it's also based on a lot of data, and there's a little bit of storytelling in there. And I
Okay.
think for sales, storytelling is important because it really puts it into context.
Yeah.
And there's some really interesting concepts in there. And one of them that I've always believed in and was confirmed with spin selling is the fact that a hard close is never good, and closing techniques are just that. They're schmaltzy techniques. You do have to close a sale, but if you're using a technique, it might use on smaller ticket items, but when you're talking about bigger ticket items, you're usually frustrating the buyer.
Mhm.
And most buyers know they're being sort of pushed into some technique. Would you rather start next week or the week afterwards? Well, that's a closing technique. Or
Yeah.
should we send this to your home office or to your work number? So
And what's interesting with what you just said is that give my suggestion that I'll add at some point at the end refers to this, right? Where a lot of salespeople are trained to do the hard close and to add scarcity and to all that, which is actually a very big trigger and a very big sales killer for a lot of buyers.
yep.
So it's interesting that you bring it up as part of a big one of your big takeaways of spin selling.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think it's key, when you're doing a little easy, a small ticket item. If you're trying to convince someone to buy something small or whatever, then they're not investing. There's not a huge amount of money invested, and there's maybe a little bit of time, and you might be able to sell things. But when it has any kind of importance and value in the person's life or the person's business, usually it's very counterindicative. It's assuming your buyer is not very intelligent. Um, so
All right.
anyway, there's a lot of other lessons in spin selling, but no,
But
that's
I like
definitely,
that you gave one big takeaway. That's
yeah.
nice. I like
All
that.
right, and the next one I want to talk
I mean,
about
because we
is,
could ultimately do a show on each one of these books.
yeah, we probably could, but the point for me is just really what I want. And you don't have to read these books specifically, but just get interested and try them out, and through Audible or whatnot, read a couple of pages, see if it talks to you. But I think it has a lot of effect, and if you're reading the right book and it talks to you, it can really help you see things differently or confirm what you already know,
Cool.
which is fine. The next one I want to talk about is Leadership Strategy and Tactics by Jocko Willink. Jocko Willink is an ex-Navy SEAL,
Yeah.
and it's very it's very tactical. It's very much he talks a lot about his past career as a Navy SEAL, and he uses that as an example for leadership strategy and tactics, and he uses the Army a lot. And it's surprisingly not about barking orders, so that's great too. And it's about respecting people, it's about asking questions, it's about helping them move forward. And I think that's wonderful because that's the true meaning of leadership, is to help your team get better. So my big takeaway there is, even if you're in the Army and you're a good leader, you're not bullying people into making decisions. You're helping them find their own path to get better. And I think that's wonderful. And coming from a guy like Jocko Willink, it just has so much more credibility because he was a successful Navy SEAL, and he talks about
Mhm.
that. And it's, to me, it's a great read, and you don't have to be an Army lover or a warmonger. You just understand the whole leadership strategy in there, and it's wonderful. So that's
Cool.
a big takeaway for that one. And
Cool. Very
it's
cool.
a fun, that one I did in audiobooks, and it's just fun. It's fun to listen to while you're walking or whatever, exercising. It really works.
Nice. I know Jocko, but I haven't read that book, so I can catch
Yeah, yeah. And then there's of course the Challenger sale with Matthew Dixon, and there's a lot
up.
of data in there. And that one, in all honesty, for me, I found it a little bit labor intensive to read because it's very heavy. But there's some great takeaways in there that obviously the title says it all. You should be challenging your client to move out of the status quo, because obviously the status quo is not supplying them with what they need. But again, there it's about helping the client achieve what they want. Well written. And then the last one, the last sales book I want to talk about, because I want to talk about other books, is Level 5 Selling, which is a pretty recent book, and that's a whole system, Level 5 Selling, and it's actually kind of based on Neil Rackham's uh, theory too. It's very
Okay.
much tied in, and it's all about, as a salesperson, there's 5 levels, and the levels are: level 1, you're building a relationship; level 2 is price; level 3, you're a teller, you're pushing information out; level 4, you're a consultant that listens and fits your product or service in; and level 5, you're bringing value to your client. You're a needed partner to help them move forward. So I love that, because it really summarizes what consultative sales should be. It's a short listen. Like if you're doing it on audiobooks, it's 2 hours. Boom,
Yes.
it gets to the point. I just really, really like that. And it's something, as a sales leader, there's a little bit of information you can use in there to help you move forward with your team. So, but it's a high level book, excuse the pun, but it really helps you understand your team. So that one I really enjoyed. I read that recently. It's one that came on my radar recently, and I think it's a brilliant book. I think you wanted to
Oh.
mention one too.
Yeah, mine is about selling. Is also with it's also from
Matthew
Matthew
Dixon.
Dixon
Yeah.
and Ted McKenna, so the Challenger sales folks. And I forgot the premise, but of how they got started. But basically, they were doing research into another book, and this insight came out that the top salespeople are actually great at combating buyer indecision, which is like probably one of the biggest silent killers of deals, or at least more complex deals. That really nobody talks about, right? And I really liked how you mentioned, and I'll bring that back, um, how in spin selling, like it's not hard closes don't work, and salespeople are still being taught to close hard and add scarcity and things like that. And their book is about how doing those things in a complicated sale actually hinders a deal, and
Yeah.
because it forces people into indecision because they just have, I mean, there's a lot of different types of indecision, and they break that all that down, but ultimately they freeze, right? They're just, well, I can stick with the status quo with what I know is not working with me, but is this solution the right one? And they freeze and they don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it really helps you as a leader, like coach your team in terms
Yeah.
of how to combat buyer indecision.
Well, I love it. I mean, I discovered it today, maybe, and I'm definitely gonna look into that one. So, thanks for that. No, it's good, and it's true, and you see it. Again, it's something you're not surprised to hear, right? Because you see it with clients. You feel it yourself sometimes. You're living something at home, like you've got, I don't know, an old furnace or something. You're like, new person comes, oh yeah, that'd be great, but then you're worried. You're okay, I'll just stick to what I have, even though I know it doesn't work. There's too much fear in moving forward. So
Yeah,
I think everyone can relate to that as a buyer. So a great summary. Thank
yeah, I would definitely recommend it. That was, out of all the books I did not read, that was the one that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed reading it because there's some insights in there that you don't hear a lot about when you read marketing, sales books and sales podcasts and sales blogs. And so very interesting.
Yeah, and the last one, I might be treading on dangerous water here, because it's more of a marketing book. It's Build a Strong Brand by Donald Miller. He built a
Hmm.
system called SB7. He helps you think about how to do things and whatnot. And my big takeaway from that was, when you're talking, he uses different. I think he was a script writer at one point, so he's saying, when you're writing something, obviously the strength of the story, and also making the hero your client. So about whoever is going to be buying your product, you should make them feel like they're the hero. So either in your script or in your discussions, or in your marketing. And I thought that was really interesting. Anyways, I'm reading that one, and there's a lot to be applied there. And I'm certainly not a marketing expert, but I thought it was interesting. Because again, it does wrap around to a sales concept, which is, it's about your client. It's not about you.
Right.
And a lot of websites are all about, we did this, we did that, and you get on the website and you don't have a clue how it can help you, and you got to dig deep into it. And then there's other, and he was talking. One example he gives, which I love, and he says that Steve Jobs before he got fired from Apple, when they released Lisa, which is one of their computers. They had like a 9-page PDF that went with it. It was like horrible. No one read it, and the computer sales of that failed miserably. He got fired, as you know. He left
Yeah.
Apple, and when he came back, he went totally the opposite. When he released the new Mac after that, it was Think Big. So it went from 9 pages to Think Big. So he kept it, or was it Think Big? No, sorry,
Think different.
Think Different. Thank you. Sorry, brain fart. Think Different. So that it totally changed. He totally changed his approach, and he understood that he just had to inspire people rather than giving him a big fact sheet. So anyways,
Right.
So Donald Miller goes through the book. Goes through a bunch of different things, ton of valuable information, which I think you could probably talk to a lot more being a marketing expert. But I take it from a sales side and thinking, as a salesperson, what can you take away from that? And
Cool.
And the last
Just
book,
go for it. I was just going to add, I know we only have 3 minutes left because I do have a hard stop, but I just want to throw in, and it's one that I've mentioned before, and I just thought of it now, is The Inner Game of Tennis. Obviously, it relates to tennis, but there's so many coaching tips in there and coaching advice and how to coach people and how to get them to have success. To me, it's an absolute must read for any manager out there. So.
I love it. That's great. And my last one is going to sound like it's really off the wall. It's Rick Rubin's most recent book, The Creative Act. I don't know. Did you read that or did you hear about it?
I tried to. I found it really boring, but I know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because it is a little slow at first, but it's all about, how to hone in on your creative spirit. And I think as an entrepreneur or as a salesperson, you also have to find your voice and who you are. So all these other books are great and they're much more tactical and direct, but understanding what drives your creativity and what impassions you is wonderful. So that's why I like this book. So you find it boring, and that's fine. My wife absolutely loved it. I'm somewhere in between you, but I see it more as a book that's a tool to help people be creative and think outside the box and to find their inner voice. So yeah, that would be about it. So really different podcasts. Just want to go in a little different direction. And of course, Fab and I did not invent sales. We didn't invent sales operations. But what we do is we try to take the best from what we see out there and apply it to our clients' experience so that we can help them achieve their objectives. And as a salesperson, as a sales leader, you're doing that with your team. You're also helping your team do that with their clients. And as a sales leader, as a salesperson, you're trying to help your clients achieve a goal. And I think a common element in all of these sales books is your client should be at the center of what you're trying to do, help them move forward. And it's not about, a slick salesperson trying to give you some slick pitch. It's really about helping your clients move forward.
Love it, Paul.
Thanks, Fab.
Short and sweet and really interesting. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
See you later. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, buddy.
Bye.